Here we go. Hi, my name is Dan Haley. I am the editor and publisher of Wednesday Journal and of Growing Community Media, the nonprofit entity that now owns and publishes Wednesday Journal and our three other community newspapers from the west side out to Forest Park, down the river to Riverside and Brookfield. This is the second in our one-on-one interviews with the two candidates for Oak Park Village President in the April 6th election. There is an interview also posted with Cate Readling, who is running for this office. Today, we are talking to Vicki Scaman, currently the village clerk, who is candidate for Oak Park Village President. And Vicki, thank you for being with us.
And truly thank you for having me and for your many, many years of service in our community.
Well, thank you. So you announced 9 months ago, something like that, last summer, early on in the pandemic. So it's all been campaign altered by the pandemic. But I wanted to ask you, I don't remember a village clerk ever running for village president. Has there been anyone?
Not that I am aware of. I'm pretty confident the answer is no, unless it was before 1952, but still, even then, I believe the answer is no.
So you spent the last 3.5 years sitting at the council table, quietly, doing the clerk's role. At what point in the process did it occur to you, I think I want to run for elected policy making office, and then I don't want to be a trustee, I want to be village president? How did that happen in your mind?
Well, I'm really starting to think, as I got to the second half of my 4 years as village clerk, that every future village president should maybe consider being the village clerk first. It might be a good orientation, and a little bit of humbling, because also in the village clerk's office, you're listening to people every day and their challenges, the challenges that may not be forefront in the mind of policy, but it helps give you perspective, and it helps you feel the weight on your shoulders. And I do say this a lot, of what it means to be an elected official. I go back into the office Tuesday morning after a Monday night board meeting, and I see the staff people after a meeting that didn't go well. I see the look on their face, and some of them go, Vicki, what are we supposed to do with this? These are the people that are running our community. They're responsible for our jobs. It hits them in a very different way. And then when the community continues to grow more and more divided, and they have demands on their village manager form of government too, there's a real disconnect that these are all still people that work at Village Hall. And that you are elected to represent, you're elected to listen. And sometimes that might mean, stepping outside of your own comfort zone to understand somebody else's perspective. So when did I really
let me stop you a second.
Okay.
So on the Tuesday mornings after a meeting went bad, these are meetings that went bad because there was a decision made that was unpopular within Village Hall, or was it just observing what has become a pretty dysfunctional board and people feeling off kilter because of that?
More often it's the latter. More often, there are times when there's a lot of work that's been put into a project, and then there's just a disconnect on where the true benefit of the project is. And the people who are professionals behind it might understand that better. And so the discourse doesn't even allow for like a deeper, truer understanding. You might remember when the salary of the village clerk's office was being challenged, and I just didn't even have words at the end. I just looked and said, you don't even know what you're talking about.
It was a plan to cut the position to part-time and bring down the salary, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Right, there's deeper understanding, there's deeper insight. into what the role is and the value of it being elected, but also the self-awareness that you have to have, the understanding of a form of government that you have to not be undermining a village manager as you're helping people through bureaucratic processes. Um, and so there to not so often some of the decisions that might have been made that didn't feel as if they really got to the critical thinking, asking the right questions of staff at the board table. That tends to be more because um, they're not, yeah, they're, let me try to find the words here. Um, they don't know what it looks like in real life. You know, the function of some of the policies that are being decided on. But then the other part, the dysfunction, the discourse, there's very harmful things. There's no doubt. No one in our community right now can say that there hasn't been harm done at this board table with words. So yes, white, black, younger, older, counter staff, administrators, they're, this is their profession, this is their life. And the members of the board table are, particularly in a pandemic, sometimes just completely forgetting that. The whole discussion around the commissions, they're, I obviously, as the village clerk, I know what every single commission does, right? I know what their work plans are. I know what their function is. I know how and what resource they could be to providing that cultural relevance of people who live in a community around any topic, whether it be transportation or environment and energy. But then you have a professional village manager that you turn to and you say, give us the Rolodex of all of the different strategies that would help us address this goal that we have as a board. But then we have a commission. So no one's really going to understand that more deeply at this point in our history than me, in working through helping people get on those commissions and watching them as a job.
When you were hearing from citizens and listening, so what do you hear about? Do you hear about minutia of I can't figure out how to get a vehicle sticker, or do you hear broader concerns? And because you think there was some value in any candidate for village president having that experience. So what kind of incoming do you get from citizens?
Okay, so it can be something as simple as working through the permit process or understanding why certain fees exist. Even the $5 fee for an accident report. I had no idea before I was a
$5 fee for an accident report?
Yeah, you're in an accident. Somebody's hit your car. There's a $5 fee to get a copy of that. That feels like it's only $5, but it just feels like a little salt on a wound, right? But it's not actually coming from the village. It's coming from IDOT. And it's that processing of it through our system. Like we don't even think about when we go to sell our car, how does CarX know, or not CarX, but how do they know that our car was in an accident? And it's these databases. So it's really a fee that's passed through, but it can really be in a community where you've got, where you feel like you're just being just taxed out, and everything is a fee. That can be irritating, right? So then to have somebody kind of really just explain that to you, it can help a lot. And then others are when you see something go through the plan commission process and you're just like, what just happened? The people who live here, they're intelligent. They're intelligent. They know when something has not gone the way it's supposed to go. So then sometimes to just have somebody not explain what happened before, in the middle, and what's happening next, even if you don't like the decision, you can process it a little bit. You don't want to be treated like a child, and so this idea that residents are on a need-to-know basis sometimes, that's only going to be putting gasoline on a fire. So then to have somebody who just kind of explains to you where it came from. So then that's the deep insight that I have that is, pretty extensive. And it goes be to how we relate to our other governmental partners too.
Can we
So
go back though a second to the initial question? And I get your point about village clerk being a unique preparation to be village president. But you're sitting there the last 3 years, and at some point, there's something unhappy, my word, not yours,
mhm.
and that makes you think I can do this better. What was that thought process?
Yeah, and it wasn't even necessarily unhappy. It was about being responsible. So when exactly did it happen? It was very gradual. So it's a little difficult for me to like pinpoint, like there wasn't a meeting that I went home and said, I'm going to do this. There were people close to me in my life that I would process things with. And they would come back at me and be like, Vicki, you're explaining this to me in a way that I bet the trustees don't even understand. And that's not that the trustees aren't intelligent, okay? And so, people close to me would just and recognize that. So it definitely was, once it pivoted from just being uninformed decisions to causing harm. And then when the next step was the causing harm and with race discussions, I believe that's what I'm referring to, right? The next step was when it was just taking people that otherwise, probably had more in common. They had a circle of where they had operated with their neighbors in the community where they were friends. And now these friends are like, I don't know if I can be your friend anymore. Where it was really being looking like the national political landscape.
You've been in
And
Oak Park a long time.
yes,
Um, I have lived and worked in Oak Park a long time, although I'm not in Oak Park now. Um, I've never seen the divide that I see now. I've watched boards that malfunctioned, and I've seen a handful of trustees who were um, either incompetent or on some sort of an ego path. But by and large, decent folks doing their best. The divide right now on the board and as it plays out in the community is really unlike anything I have experienced. Is that how you look at it?
well, I mean, I have talked to some past presidents who have referred to times in 1968 and 1972 when there were multiple parties that were running, and some were very, much in favor of the fair housing ordinance, and others were still very not, right? Yeah. So to hear you say with the knowledge that you have of our community, with all of that you've written about, you're kind of, there's some maybe similarity that the two of us have, if you don't mind me saying, in that we write about it. And there's an understanding too, when you're writing about the budget process, I'm a teacher, that was my first trade, right? So then writing about it, it just solidifies your understanding of what it is. And so to hear you say that with all that you've written about our community, it's something that we really need to just take in and reflect on.
It does feel like the national chaos has come to town. So
Yes.
that's disheartening.
Yes, it is. Yes,
So
it is.
that's part of why you decided you were going to run.
It is. It really is. And yes, there's a lot of people in our community that don't really know my history and they see me as, I was a white woman who, in the role of the clerk, did remain quiet in a time when we really can't afford to remain quiet, right? But and other people who have worked with me know that I've been writing policy that is equitable for decades, that I have been part of programs and coalition building, and that has uh, been embracing of our breadths of viewpoints and culture, and being a very supportive person, somebody that, when you wanted to figure out how to get something done in our school systems or at the township or at the library, you would say, Vicki, can you help me figure this out? Help me navigate this. And so that was one of the reasons that I ran for village clerk. And I think that I had zero intention of running for village president, because as you pointed out, typically this is not a direct line. In the role of clerk, it's hard to demonstrate to a community that you have that skill set. So now that's my challenge in my campaign. And there's, my children are older. So you relate to the people that you know through so often the age of your children. So running for village president now was recognizing that we cannot look back and not have made the progress that we need to make, and that the two things are necessary: the self-awareness and the know-how, the experience, in order to not look back and not have made the progress that we need to make. And somebody that can bring both sides back together. So I'm sitting in the clerk's office and I'm listening to folks on both sides of the aisle. And
Among trustees, you're saying?
I'm sorry?
Among
No,
trustees?
I'm talking about people in the community, people who are coming forward asking for information, whether it be because they're really concerned about our taxes or because they're really concerned about development or why our commissions are being undermined. So so if those two people were in the same room, they would probably be having opposing views, but I am helping both sides. And so there's a huge benefit in that too, because then that helps me meet somebody where they're at to bring them along on a journey. So I'll go back to just reiterate that it's really about making sure that we make progress. And so a more humble leadership style, one that knows how to put the processes back that help us make informed decisions, and that help those that are at the board table know how to accomplish what it is that they set out to do. Because frustration in not being able to make the progress that you wanted to make when you decided to run for office, because you and I can both agree too, that, you don't run for office if you don't care about Oak Park. It's too much work, and it is really a thankless job. Your reason for doing it has to be civic service. Your reason for doing it has to be because you care about your community so much and the people who are in it, that you want to make a positive impact. And that's what my life has been about. So yes, I sat at the board table. I realized that I had a very specific skill set that was necessary right now. And so I can take whomever the community decides to elect as trustees, and I can sit down with them and help identify where their goals are and where all of our goals overlap, and then help them understand how to accomplish it. So that helps take some of the friction away right there. Because when you're elected and you've been trying to get something done and you feel like you keep hitting one brick wall after another, then that's contributing to the division just as much as the lack of self-awareness sometimes is. And there's different roles that we have in order to create change in a community. And so there's roles for activists that hold us accountable as elected officials. And there's roles for people who know how to write and move forward policy. And there's roles for people who are really good listeners that can help, participate in informing policymakers and making sure, but there's, you know, I'm going to go back for a second to the feeling the weight on your shoulders. Sometimes there's moments on Facebook, and I'm not huge with on Facebook, okay, that, you know, people want you to say certain things. You know, they want to hear you respond. And as a leader with a platform, once I'm elected, hopefully, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, then I'll be able to use that platform to help our community have very important discussions. But sometimes to respond, you have to be measured. You have to understand that your response is about the common good. You know, that sometimes it's okay to have other, activists call things out. And as a white person, to know when I need to be quiet and be listening and not appropriating a conversation.
You talk about people with different roles and they all have value. I mean, um, one of the things unfolding in this election is that you have a person like Anthony Clark, who is, I think of Anthony Clark as an activist, and pretty successful and God knows diligent in being an activist. Some would perceive Cate Readling as an activist. Although when I talked to her the other day, I think she said, I think of myself more as an organizer than an activist. And I think that's an interesting distinction. Do you think activists have a place as elected officials, or are they more successful and more valuable poking sticks at people over other roles?
I think there can be space for an activist for sure. I mean, and the reason I say, I've built non-for-profit boards. And when you're building a non-for-profit board, you're looking more pragmatically for, I'd like to see a treasurer, maybe a CPA, maybe a lawyer, maybe somebody who is a teacher. You're looking for different skill sets. And what you're looking for then is for some push and pull so that you come to sometimes, you're coming to informed decisions. We'll just say that, ones that have those different breadths of perspectives that have had an opportunity to weigh in. But so looking at where we are in our community, though, looking at where our division is, looking at how huge that gap in the middle is, okay, to have somebody right now who has operated that way as an activist, I just don't think that that's going to also allow for any other activists that are in the trustee role to be as productive together. You're going to need a village president who has, again, the know-how on how to move policy forward, who's guiding that ship. So if I was building a board where I already had a lawyer, I already had a CPA, then I might not be looking for another one. I might be looking for the artist and, the critical thinker and those other skill sets. So, we want a board with some balanced experience and perspectives that represent our community, and all that are willing to listen to our community and work together.
Let me go back to what you talked about a few minutes ago in terms of process and wanting to bring back process. That's what I heard you say. And let me push back. And again, because I'm old and have been around a long time, I have watched in Oak Park as the village government just drowned in process and nothing ever came to conclusion. I think it's a really stark contrast in terms, and whether you like what Adnan Abu Taleb has done in terms of development or you don't like it, he was very frank in saying, this is what I want to do. and he accomplished a lot of it. Whereas in past years, Oak Park, development stalled and plan commissions met for, 100 hours to talk about a building. And we still wound up with a monstrosity like the Whiteco building on Harlem Avenue. That was that was what it finally coughed up. And so what's the balance between being respectful of process and not letting it just drag Oak Park back into a place where nothing ever comes to a conclusion?
Maybe some respect of the roles, respect of our form of government. So in having been a teacher, I do tell this story or explain this a bit as you would with our school systems. So there's this pendulum that just seems to inevitably swing back and forth, of when in the 80s, we were all, our kids were coming back with backpacks telling us to let them learn through experimentation. I actually remember like my kitchen counter having Jello and Rice Krispie treats and just letting them make a mess, make an absolute mess that would take hours to clean up because they're learning. And then we look and we're realizing that is, and they're not coming away always with the same core skills, right? That we need, and discipline has gotten a little too loose. So then what does the school district do? They hire somebody who's going to right that ship. They hire somebody that, you remember the days of zero tolerance? Well, we know that zero tolerance doesn't work either. So that's really what the role of the board is. The role of the board is to keep that, you've got over here for the loose and over here for the, micromanaging, and you need to be somewhere in here. And so the board is directing a village manager to remain in that space. And so that's what we've done. We've gone and we do that, and it just keeps going back and forth. So again, I'll just point to so what would the processes look like? Because what I was going to say is that really understanding what the processes should look like is what's very important. We need to know what goal we're setting. And when we're working as a board on policy, we have to define that goal first. And then we need to be asking the village manager, who's a professional, who knows what they're doing with this stuff. And we are all part-time people who have other jobs, right? To bring forward the information we need to make informed decisions. So there was a point. Anand did do exactly what he set out to do. And for that, I have some level of respect. And democracy is my first love. So it's like, if you don't like it, show up at the polls, right? And listen and really learn who you're voting for and what they stand for. And that's what our election process should be about, is really learning about the candidates. Shouldn't be about money, shouldn't be, it should be about learning about the candidates, right? And making sure that they're doing these things for the right reasons, or at least that they represent your values. So that you want to be able to be critical thinkers, hold that village manager accountable for bringing that information forward. Our commission system is frustrating for some. So for Anand, this was a challenge because he believes that there should be more accountability for the decisions. And if you have all these people who have a role in the decision making, then it makes it harder to hold that one person accountable, which is quite honestly why he wanted to use, I shouldn't speak for him, so I won't, but my belief is why the term mayor. Not that he didn't learn as a leader how to work with people at the board table, but that was his goal. So you want to be utilizing the resources that are in front of you. But when I was and stay on task. Stay on task. So some of the meetings that you're remembering, they just got to paralysis of the analysis, right? Which we've heard at Oak Park many, many times. And we chase our community neighbors away from wanting to interact with us because they know that if Oak Park is involved, then it means it's going to have to go through 3 committees. So there is a happy medium. There is some where you really want to, in order to understand what that goal is, you do have to listen. You do need to have that cultural relevance of people who live here in the community, who can take the vision and the mission that you set as a board and help you make informed decisions. And so there we're the so it really that the when I did run a coalition with the township that had every single governmental partner involved, we started every single meeting on time and we ended every single meeting on time. The agenda was appropriately written so that it was using everybody's time, valuing their time, and staying focused. And so every policy, every budget item should be connected to what the goal is of the board. And so you need to stay on task. So then again, another skill set that the village clerk has is how to run a meeting, parliamentary procedure. So I'm the president of the Municipal Clerks Association. I'm proud to be that. And I did have a clerk from another community who did vote for me in that position tell me that one of the things that she did like about me is that one of the first times she met me, I related some of that self-awareness of how Oak Park can be perceived to our neighbors. And she just felt as if that made it easier to work with me. Like we could have an honest conversation. And so I'll just say it more bluntly. You know, I had actually gone to a meeting and said that we were making a mess of things. And we have again and again and again. So we need structure, we need shared goals, we need to follow our form of government, we need to understand what our different roles are, we need to have a plan.
The village board ultimately makes the choices, and there will be times you would assume that a board will overrule a commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but you do need to be listening. And when that decision is made, it should be honestly explained. Again, remember that we are intelligent people who live here. When people walk away knowing that something was a little bit off and they were on a need to know basis, that's not the way we should operate. Just respect each other and be honest and transparent with your decision making. The reason that I believe that there are times when a village board is going to override any commission, whether it be the Historic Preservation or Environment and Energy or Transportation Commission, is because the board has more to consider than that one scope. Okay. And so sometimes when you can have the information from a transportation commission and a plan commission and a zoning board all weigh in on one project. But each one of the commissions they're responding to you with the guidelines and the procedures of their commission, the scope of their commission. And you as elected officials to the community have to again be making that decision based on what is in the best interests of the community. So the questions you want to be asking on a campaign trail are like, do you care about architectural significance? Do you care about affordable housing? Do you care about, and the answer is yes. I care deeply about those things. As a longtime Oak Park resident, I've been here over 33 years, 34 years. I care deeply about these things. I believe we should start from a place of truth and honesty and listening. And when those times come that we're making a decision, they need to be transparent.
Let me diverge a minute. When we had the session, the joint conversation with you and Cate Readling, my recollection is that you said something about the village clerk's office is the highest paid job you've ever had. And you've talked about being a teacher and running a nonprofit, so that's maybe not such a stunning thing. But you're giving that up. Village president makes, I forget how much, $20,000 a year or something. Not a lot.
Not a
More
lot,
than more than a token, but not a living wage.
right? Less than that.
Are you planning to work elsewhere beyond being village president?
Well, eventually, yes. But I am not rushing that process. I am lucky that I do have a significant other that can help carry our household for a bit. We're both empty nesters. We live in a very small house, a 2-bedroom bungalow in a park. And so I've always been of modest means. And no one's really gonna cry themselves to sleep for me. I'm an educated woman when I can find a job. And
I ask only because I think it has been interesting to watch over the years um, when there is a village president who doesn't have alternate employment. There have been times when they
yes.
take up residence at Village Hall and, yeah, I'm sure the manager would like to, drop a pot on their head and say, go on your way and I'll see you Monday night. And so it's always struck me as maybe a better balance if a village president had honest work elsewhere too.
Yes, and it can't be how you identify. I have an identity whether I'm the village president or not. I mean, I'm not. I don't need this um, to validate who I am as a person, and I think that that's a very healthy thing too.
It's very healthy. I agree.
Because
Why do you think it is? And it's complicated for sure. Um, and it's, coming from my perception here. Oak Park's village government has historically, going back to the 60s, had leadership on issues related to integration, race. Um, and I would say over the last many years, that has kind of faded. And that the village government, and even as and not that the school districts are a panacea of equity, but they're plowing at it. And the village government seems largely unable just to have a courageous conversation about race and equity. And now that extends in the last year after Mr. Floyd's murder in Minneapolis to issues of policing. Why are we so stuck?
defensiveness, fear.
All the usual white stuff, white people stuff.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we do want to pat ourselves on the back and have for a long time. And we've had many conversations where we never even started from the truth. We talk about the 1968 Fair Housing Ordinance as if it was the intention for us to be this glorious integrated community, when there really isn't an acknowledgement that the true motivation behind it was to maintain our own, was to keep our community from needing to leave our house and white flight. So it was to keep our own. It wasn't to be integrated. So we haven't started from a place of truth in our community. I mean, I am proud, huh?
That is dead on. And I mean, there was bravery And then there was white bravery in 1968, for sure. But there was self-interest positively.
Yes. Yes. And even some of the racial equity trainings that have happened between our governmental partners over the last couple of years, I was the person who stood up in the room and said that. And I had some of our leaders today say, what do you mean? And I laid it out for them. I've also been somebody who has always gone and had conversation with our elders. I was lucky enough to have known Virginia Casson and to have sat in her house and to have learned from her. And the clerks that we've had since, Sandra Sokol and Teresa Powell. When I stepped into the role of village clerk, it was because, or with very little or no learning curve. It was partly because of that, and just my willingness to constantly be learning, but then also my experience on the liquor board and other ways where I was working very directly with the village clerk's office, and then my deep insight into what our form of government is. So yeah, we haven't, I have a file that I loaned out to somebody fairly recently of all of the times that our community has gone through the race equity conversation since 1987. All the times that we've worked to address the achievement gap at the school system. I was one of the first people to say and to challenge the board in the early 2000s on where's your social emotional learning curriculum. And it's, so I haven't been at this. This isn't a new thing for me. Telling these stories and educating people around me, mine's come from living and listening.
So if you're village president, how do you lead us toward productive, uncomfortable conversations?
With modesty and the willingness to listen without defensiveness. And to bring, yeah, to be able to apologize. Another thing that seems to be a challenge for men and women alike, they seem to think that, to apologize for when you have messed up is somehow as a weakness. And it's not. To me, it means you have self-confidence. You have real self-confidence. And that's what I have at this point. I'm a resilient single mom I'm the first person born here in the United States from my mother's side of the family. My father passed away in 2020 of mental health. It was the same, I've nothing that I have lived through hasn't been, has had anything to do with the color of my skin, but I've lived a very humble life, recognizing how grateful I need to be for everything that I've got.
I read this somewhere. So you are first generation?
Yeah, my mother was born in Germany. Yeah.
I don't think I ever knew that.
Yeah, there very few people in my family are here from Germany. Almost every. So my grandfather moved to New York in 1952. Ironically, so it's like a lot of Oak Park's history has been only since the first person in my family has stepped on our soil. And then he moved to Chicago, and he left his family in Germany, and found a job. He worked at Williams Pinball Factory, and he maybe before that might have been Zenith. I'm not sure, but anyway, he was an engineer, but he was blue collar working on a line. And then when he had a stable living, then he sent for my grandmother and my mother and her brother and sister. And so eventually my grandmother's sister moved here as well. And so my grandmother's grandchildren and my grandmother's sister's grandchildren are here, and there's maybe 15 of us total.
So a couple of issues related to in the orbit of crime. Are you aware of this defund police video that is circulated in the last 10 days? And what do you make of it?
I have seen it once. I find it to be fear tactics that are very, very harmful to our community. It saddens me greatly. It is an education that if I'm lucky enough to be elected village president, is a perfect example of something that I would address honestly, openly, and work with people quiet, and to understand each other a little bit more, to put some fear to ease over time. But the understanding that that is wrong behavior, that is harmful to our community, that's the message that needs to be heard first.
The referendum itself isn't exactly moving us to higher ground.
No. You remember I wrote an op-ed on that right away as soon as that was passed.
Yep.
I thought that was a complete failure as elected officials, to not recognize the greater good, to not recognize that without context, without a discussion, that we were operating from a place of great fear.
You ever been the victim of a crime?
Yes, I have. Mostly from white people. When I was a school teacher in Dalton, I was young. I was 23 years old, and I was as naive as you could even imagine me being. And you've known me for a long time. Okay. I had no idea what I was getting into. But that humble German upbringing that I had, where my grandfather was very, you notice I have zero accent. He raised us to be American because there was this real shame in being German. Yeah. So I don't know for sure if that's really what helped me become part of who I am today. I think there's a lot of different things throughout my life that have contributed to who I am today. And I think that's true for all people. But I would get a phone call from a person I was with at the time when I was teaching. Where are you right now? Oh, I'm in the parking lot. There's another bomb threat at the school. You need to come home right now. I'm like, I am fine. I am totally fine. My car broke down one time and I was stuck in the parking lot of a local grocery store until after dark. I just didn't feel afraid. I felt I was aware that no one was going to let anything happen to me. Whether that was just my naivete, I don't know, but yeah, I felt safe.
We got a few minutes left. Let's talk about what has been a very weird election season, Park. You may have been the first person to say you were going to run for village president. Were you? I think you were.
I think Simone might have been, because she told that like a full year in advance.
Simone Boutet was first. That's right. So we've had people come into the race and go out of the race. Ms. Boutet twice. We've gone from 4 presidential candidates to 2.
Mm-hmm.
If I understand this, and I'm not positive I do, but neither one of you are officially aligned with trustee candidates, or clerk candidates, which is all different than kind of the tradition, not entirely different, but it's somewhat different than the tradition. So what have you made of the political machinations?
Well, when I decided to run for village president, I went through, I think, a process of assessment that a lot of people who've run for president in our Oak Park history have gone through, and trustees alike. You go around and you poll, you talk to people that you trust, talk to people that you know the community and know the political landscape. You know, people that you can kind of dissect what is the best thing and is this a good move for the community or not. Well, part of that included knowing who I believed I'd be running against. Um, Meaning exactly Simone Boutet, or Dan Maroney. As soon as Dan Maroney put his podcast out there, that was a sign to me that Dan was likely to be running. I was a little surprised when he came out as late as he did. I found that very interesting. And then to have Simone go out and then come back in, I cannot say that I predicted that. The unfortunate truth is that I did predict the reasons why I needed to run. I did predict that there was an inevitability, that the defensiveness was growing, and that the self-awareness and some of the tone was growing, and that somebody with my skill set, my background, my experience, and my ability to bring people together, that was part of that assessment. You know, and I did have one person ask me, and I think I might have told you this before, say, you know, Vicki, there's no doubt that you can do it, right? We know you can do it, but there does have to be something in it for you because it is too much to ask. Now, why have I made, so yes, you've got school teacher, non-for-profit, small business, all things, especially those last two that were operating off of duct tape and stealing from Peter to pay Paul, right? And so you might say that, okay, Vicki, is there kind of a martyr complex going on here? That you're sacrificing. But it comes to that self-awareness that I talked about, and I know I'm saying that word a lot, but at this point, I like who I am. I like being that person. The fact that I know that I have made a difference for so many people in our community. Why did I stay at Steckman Studio of Music for 13 years? We all,
Steckman Studio is a music school in Oak Park.
Yeah. Right. And that's where I was the executive director, right? A small, very low budget, challenged non-for-profit. Because, people close to me, as much as I appreciated Dr. Steckman's mission to share the joys and benefits of music with students of all ages, regardless of financial circumstances, I always gave him credit for that was his mission way before it was mine. But people close to you will tell you that I did not stay for him. I stayed for the families that I was working with. Every quarter that I registered those families again, who I knew they wouldn't have access to the resources if I didn't stay. I know that's not like a good sustainability plan, right? But it was a challenging time. It was after 2008 too, eventually when our state of Illinois was bankrupt and they were holding back grants for well over a year, and non-for-profits had to figure out how to stay in business. So there is something in it for me. And there is a selfish side. I have never pursued making real money, but I am extremely capable of making real money. Staying in the clerk's office actually would have been a little bit of a dead end job for me. So because that salary doesn't go up every year, nor should it, right? It's an elected position like what I'm going for now. So once we have a board that can work together with shared goals and everybody is understanding how we can keep making progress together, I can pursue something that is, going to be rewarding to me too. But this is something that I know I'm good at. And part of feeling like something is rewarding is to know that you're good at it. And I'm a good listener. I have the temperament to navigate these conversations going forward. And that is what we need. That is
So
what we need.
you received the endorsement of Trustee Boutet when she left the race. That is a positive thing for you?
Well, so I see all people as faulted human beings. And I understand that but going back to that weight on your shoulders, it's not about criticizing my current colleagues. I'm aware that some of what I'm saying right now is they've heard me say it before, because I'm honest. I am always honest when I'm talking with my colleagues, but we've maintained some level of a working relationship across the board, even with Anon, and I work well with Arthi and Simone, or Susan and Jim Taglia, because there's an integrity that I have that they respect. So her endorsement is about my integrity, and I do know that every single person at that board table does care about our community. Just not everybody should be an elected official, particularly now.
And you did not get endorsed by the current mayor, who did endorse um, village president of River Forest and high school candidates and village trustee candidates. Was that a surprise to you, or not really?
I've been very clear from the very beginning is that why I ran as an independent. And so it's my belief that Anon was respecting that. I do know that we have a positive working relationship, and where we've had moments when I've called and said, you need to just let me do my job. But you know what? He respected that I called him and said, you need to let me do my job.
Are you suggesting that he has consciously not endorsed you because it might not be to your advantage? Or you're not sure?
Yeah, I wouldn't go to presume. And certainly, yeah, I would say you'd have to ask him that directly. But I have been clear and he was too. When he ran for office in 2017 and 2013, he said many times at the board table, he ran as an independent for a reason. It was, and so I was thinking about the community when I decided to run as an independent.
Are there trustee candidates or a clerk candidate that you are supportive of?
There's skill sets with every single person who's running for office right now that I value. And there's a perspective for everybody that's running for office that I value, perspective that they would be bringing to the board table. That's why I feel very secure, very calm, very confident, and looking forward to switching from campaigning to governing, that I will have no problem working with whoever is elected. And I respect, the same way that I respect the people that are sitting at the board table now, for their desire to serve our community. So no, I have to refrain. And I really look for everybody to be informed voters, and to look to dig deep into why people are running for office, and learn as much as you can about their skill set, and to have a board that represents our community and where we want to go. And so there's different goals that we have that we want to reach. And I actually think that we're in a good place to really show our neighboring communities that we can do this, that we can respect that we need to live within our means, that we have to move a climate action plan forward, that we have to look at racial equity, that we need to be doing these things openly, transparently, and with the community. We need to be working to reduce fear and reduce the divide. And we have to be working with our other governmental partners too, to rebuild that trust, so that we're working far more collaboratively. Because the other problem with that pendulum, when it swings too far to that micromanaging piece, is it stifles ingenuity and it stifles collaboration. And so we do have our work cut out for us. But, you know, in saying that we need to start from a place of truth, that's what I intend on doing right with a future board. I will give credit to Oak Park for, you know, I mean, it's just, we have accomplished a great deal in the past, and we need to build on that, honestly.
Thanks so much for your time. Again, Dan Haley from Wednesday Journal. And this is the second of our 2 one-on-one interviews with the 2 candidates for Oak Park Village President. Vicki, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan, and for everything you do for our community again.
Very good. Thank you. Bye now.